Okay, let's head over to Oslo now. On the line for us is Hajar al-Kaddo, the thematic manager on energy at NORCAP, which forms part of the Norwegian Refugee Council. And appreciate you coming on because it's a very specific thing. There's a lack of energy. It's something that most of us, whilst we may complain about the expense, we usually take the fact that there's a supply of it for granted. When you don't have it, what kind of impact does it have on day-to-day lives?
Yeah, no, exactly. Great question. And I think your colleague in the field alluded to this, right? When we're talking about Gaza, we're talking about catastrophic almost kind of fuel shortages. From our reports that we released just recently, we see that, even 17% of the minimum daily fuel needs that were needed in the country that were not received. And when obviously we're sitting, in the luxuries of Europe, right? But when we see what's happening in Gaza, we're talking about, again, reiterating what your colleague is saying, families burning wood. We're talking about families burning debris, even aid pallets that we that are being brought into Gaza were being chopped up to be basically burnt for fuel. So we're seeing, with fuel shortages, whether electricity blackouts, we're looking at families, not being able to refrigerate their food, medicines, going off, nobody able to charge their phones. We're not able to light shelters, for example. And so there's an increasing and limited movement in the dark as well. So yeah, a lot is going on in terms of fuel and access to it. But what we're seeing is people are starving because they can't even cook. And when they do cook, they're using polluting fuels like debris, like these makeshift kind of fuel sources as well.
Yeah,
We've
that's an
also
interesting
seen
point
from
that
our
you make
latest,
there, that
yeah.
when people are desperate, they might be burning anything to get their hands on, but at times that could be toxic, so it could be doing more harm than good. If you're talking about fuel as being a necessity to cooking food, to enabling a clean water supply, and when it gets colder in the winter, just to stay warm and not get hypothermia, I mean, that to me sounds like it's something that should be considered a basic human need and right. Are there no laws internationally that guarantee people access to something like that?
Absolutely. I think it was a couple of years ago that the UN stated actually that energy was a basic human right. And this was stated about 3 years plus ago. Our report is saying energy is not a luxury. Energy is a lifeline. We know that the people of Gaza, are not looking for miracles here, right? They're asking for light to see, they're looking for fuel to cook with, and power to keep their children alive. So we have the tools, right? We need to make sure there are unrestricted access, obviously, prior to that, a ceasefire, but we know the tools and technologies are available. We just need the access to be able to bring in the fuel, the technology, and so on. So to answer your question, absolutely, there's laws about this, but that's important for the international community to realize to help us lift these restrictions to be able to do our jobs a lot better.
I know that Israel thinks that it's fighting a war against Hamas, but even in wars, there are, rules, standards by which everybody agrees to operate, usually to keep our humanity. Israel doesn't seem to be supplying the fuel that's required. I don't understand why. Again, shouldn't there be some kind of rules to stop that happening? Shouldn't there be some kind of punishment for it?
Uh, Certainly, but I mean, at this stage, we're calling for the same thing over and over again, right? Ceasefire and unrestricted kind of access. I think for us, just looking at, even the way hospitals, just to go back to examples from the field, right? Without them, they're not being able to run. We've talked about the water pumps, we've talked about sewage. The delivery of aid is actually completely restricted because there's so much fuel shortages. We can't get anything from the south to north and so on. So yeah, unrestricted access is the number one priority. The second one is to allow us to do our jobs, right? As humanitarian agencies. We saw even previously, solar, for example, was being used up as a backup by the families within Gaza. And now, due to the completely, damaged infrastructure, we're seeing a huge amount of reduction in that as well. as well. So for renewable energy sources. So absolutely, we need to see unrestricted kind of access, and we need to see the ceasefire happen, today before tomorrow.
Hajar, thank you. Good to speak to you. Hajar al-Kaddo is from NORCAP, part of the Norwegian Refugee Council.